Part 3 of The Task of the Hero from Jessie L. Weston's From Ritual to Romance. But this much seems certain: the aim of the Grail quest is twofold. It is to benefit the king and the land. The first of these two is more important, as it is the infirmity of the king, which entails misfortune on his land. The condition of the one reacts for good or ill upon the other. How or why we are left to discover for ourselves. Before proceeding further in our investigation, it may be well to determine the precise nature of the king's illness and see whether any light upon the problem can thus be obtained. In both the Gawain forms, the person upon whom the fertility of the land depends is dead, though in the version of De U Crone, he is, to all appearance, still in life. It should be noted that in the Bleheris form, the king of the castle, who is not referred to as the Fisher King, is himself hale and sound. The wasting of the land was brought about by the blow which slew the knight whose body Gawain sees on the bier. In both the Perlesvaus and the prose Perceval, the king has simply fallen into languishment. In the first instance, as noted above, on account of the failure of the quester; in the second, as the result of extreme old age. In Chrétien, Menacir, Peredur, and the Parzival, the king is suffering from a wound, the nature of which, euphemistically disguised in the French text, is quite clearly explained in the German. The whole position is made absolutely clear by a passage preserved in Sana de Nancy and obviously taken over from an earlier poem. This romance contains a lengthy section dealing with the history of Joseph de Abaramathiah. Joseph de Abaramathiah, who is represented as the patron saint of the Kingdom of Norway. His bones, with the sacred relics of which he had the charge, the Grail and the lance, are preserved in a monastery on an island in the interior of that country. In this version, Joseph himself is the Fisher King, ensnared by the beauty of the daughter of the so-called pagan king of Norway, whom he has slain. He baptizes her, though she is still an unbeliever at heart, and makes her his wife, thus drawing the wrath of heaven upon himself. God punishes him for his sin. Well, where in the Bible does it say forced marriage and forced conversion is a sin? I agree that it is, but we go on. His loins are stricken by the bane, from which he suffers lasting pain. Then, in a remarkable passage, we are told of the direful result entailed by this punishment upon the land. Lorgress, his land, was from this day called by all, and truthful to say, well should Lorgress be named with tears, with bitter weeping, grief, and fears, for here no fertile seed is sown, neither peas nor grain are grown. Never a child of man is born. Mateless maidens sadly mourn. On the trees no leaf is seen, nor are the meadows growing green. Birds build no nests, no song is sung, and hapless beasts shall bear no young. So it is, while the sinful king shall evil on his people bring. For Jesus Christ does punish well the land wherein the wicked dwell. Where does Jesus himself say that he's going to be the one who punishes the wicked in some afterlife, or decides that? Now, There can be no possible doubt here. The condition of the king is sympathetically reflected on the land. The loss of virility in the one brings about a suspension of the reproductive processes of nature on the other. The same effect would naturally be the result of the death of the sovereign upon whose vitality these processes depended. To sum up the result of the analysis, I hold that we have solid grounds for the belief that the story postulates a close connection between the vitality of a certain king and the prosperity of his kingdom. The forces of the ruler being weakened are destroyed by wound, sickness, old age, or death. The land becomes waste. The task of the hero is that of restoration. And we hear about prophetic figures being the best of models for people, and other stories kind of serve that sort of purpose as a model for people. It seems to me, then, that if we desire to elucidate the perplexing mystery of the Grail romances and to place the criticism of this important and singularly fascinating body of literature upon an assured basis, we shall do so most effectually by pursuing a line of investigation which will concentrate upon the persistent elements of the story, the character and significance of the achievement proposed, rather than of the varying details such as Grail and Lance, however important may be their role. And the wife of the Fisher King was known as Lever Dame, while her husband is yet in life, though sorely wounded. Okay. Some of the nuns say, yeah. If we can ascertain accurately and unmistakably the meaning of the whole, we shall, I think, find less difficulty in determining the character and office of the parts. In fact, the question solvitur ambulando, the complex of the problem being solved, the constituent elements will reveal their significance. As a first step, I propose to ask whether this quest of the Grail represents an isolated and unique achievement, or whether the task allotted to the hero, Gawain, Percival, or Galahad, is one that has been undertaken and carried out by heroes of other ages and in other lands. In the process of our investigation, we must retrace our steps and turn back to the early traditions of our Aryan forefathers and see whether we cannot, even in that remote antiquity, lay our hands upon a clue which, like the fabled thread of Ariadne, shall serve as a guide through the mazes of a varying yet curiously persistent tradition. And Aryan, Aryavatra, the Persians and the Hindus, their primal state, which in some ways is definitely advanced. But the question is, where in any Bible, now I don't mean the writers that were obviously, the writers who wrote it, the various texts in the so-called New Testament were Christian, but where does it have Jesus say, I'm God, worship me, or Christ is something different than it always was? It's different in me. I'm the incarnation of the Son of God, or an incarnation of God, or something like that. Where does it have Jesus teaching these things? That he's different than the other prophets and such.